Good day. I am a University of Vermont student. As fall approaches, I have been concerned, like any student, about my classes. What I should not be concerned about is whether or not the UVM administration and the government of Vermont values the lives of my friends in any way whatsoever. I am addressing the college leadership. I will not be going back to campus this fall. I will be attending remotely. Now, I made this decision remotely, and it has remained steadfast in light of the discovery of your blatant disregard for not only the safety of your students and faculty, but of our friends, our families, and the entire community of Vermont. I am terrified not only for my own life, but for the lives of people I care about very much. Your plan to reopen the campus has forced me to question whether or not you actually want us to survive, or if you believe the virus is even real. I am now questioning whether or not you value our lives or just what is in our pockets. The federal government and most colleges and universities across the country have shown that they prefer the latter. They very much prefer the latter. The government disregarded plans for containing COVID-19 early on in the pandemic once they found out it would at first affect Democrat majority states. They politicized the arguments and believed so long as the Democrats died, they didn't have to care. A U.S. Navy aircraft carrier was struck by the virus early on in the pandemic, and her captain was fired when he complained that he wasn't getting the necessary aid. He was rehired after the political storm that followed, and then quietly fired again once it had passed. That's how our troops have been treated, and colleges are doing little better. There are 172,000 coffins around the country as of the writing of this video, and there are now 181,000 as of the filming of this video. And the colleges are just encouraging that rate to go higher. The only thing I can deduce is that they just don't care. What I have read in the news about UVM's attempt to reopen its campus scares me. Many of my classmates have had to go back to school. Some have few opportunities and nowhere else to go. Some of them have had their lives crippled by this disaster. So I can understand reopening the campus to a select few people, and financial ruin for the campus and for the college, and making sure it can stay open afterwards is a concern. Colleges have to be sure they can still exist after this. And some of my friends desperately need to get away from their families. So you could theoretically open the campus for people who might need special opportunities. However, in a recent article posted in 7 Days Vermont, I see that is not what is happening. State and university decision makers argue that Vermont, with its lowest in the nation infection rate, is uniquely positioned to pull off a successful reopening. They've cast the state as the country's safest place to go to college, as the official state reopening guidelines put it. If a safe return can be done anywhere, it can be done here, UVM President Suresh Garamella said on Tuesday. The article then goes on to say, COVID-19 could not have come at a worse moment for Vermont's colleges, which were already competing for a shrinking pool of high school students. In the last 2 years, 4 private schools have collapsed under extreme financial pressure. If they want to survive, schools have little choice but to attempt a high-wire act to keep tuition dollars flowing and coronavirus cases in check. So they are working in overdrive to reinvent life on campus. Schools have ordered miles of plexiglass and seas of hand sanitizer. They've enacted elaborate rules to track where students sit at meals and to penalize those caught without a mask. Some have promised COVID-19 testing schemes at a scale far beyond anything yet undertaken in Vermont, and they've set aside entire buildings to isolate students who may have been exposed to the virus. However, reopening for special needs is one thing, but advertising yourself as the new place to go, drawing attention like this, and sticking your heads in the sand is quite another. Now let's get ahead of ourselves. Being able to stay open after the pandemic is, again, a valid concern. Appropriate measures might be able to solve things, but the article adds that these are educated guesses with no guarantee they will actually work. The article also points out, quite rightly, you cannot expect college students to not act like college students. The article says, and I quote, colleges are asking a lot of students this fall. Some reopening critics argue that the students are being set up to fail, that when colleges' plans go sideways, they will take the blame. In a July meeting with state college trustees, Castleton President Spiro acknowledged that college leaders can't merely demand compliance. College students are not used to living in a monastery, he said, so we need to provide them an outlet for their exuberance. Acknowledging the difficult ask, the Associate Dean of Student Life for Sterling College said the college is talking to students in a way that emphasizes reducing rather than eliminating risk. So in the case folks choose to break the rules, they have the information and resources they will need to make the most harm-reductive decisions. That definitely sounds like being set up to fail, because I thought it was common knowledge that students can be quite reckless. Now, not understanding students is concerning enough, but the article adds a quote from another college. I'm afraid a lot of these decisions were based on, if we don't bring our students back to campus, we're going to close, said Beth Walsh, Director of Career Development at Northern Vermont University's Johnson campus, one of the threatened state college campuses. I don't think that's the best decision-making tool to use when you're dealing with a pandemic. No, it is not. and yet that seems to be the pattern across most campuses across the country. In fact, money seems to be the thing motivating most COVID responses. A more recent article in Vermont Digger is troubling. Mayor Weinberger has proposed new measures, such as outdoor gatherings at home will be limited to 25 people, and indoor gatherings at home to 10 people. Last call for purchasing alcohol in bars and restaurants will be set at 10 p.m. This is useless. The virus is airborne. It's spread literally by breathing. One person can infect at least 5 others, and allowing such massive gatherings, even if they sound small, risks spreading the virus at an even greater exponential rate. The article went on to say, on Tuesday, Garamella and Weinberger held separate press conferences on the topic, presented a united front, with the two saying they'd work together to send Burlington police into neighborhoods to make sure that the students weren't violating the COVID-19 safety rules. Violators can be ticketed. Unless you're planning to go into individual dorm rooms, this will be ineffectual. I've seen college students host parties in dorm rooms without the RA one floor below them even being aware of them. And are you sure you want to involve the police? The article doesn't clarify what kind, and that matters because the image of police is doing extremely poorly at the moment. The nationwide track record of responding to low-stakes situations with the most extreme force does not lead me to believe they can do this job reliably and without casualties. I must ask, can you assure us tear gas and SWAT teams will not be used in these efforts to break up parties? I hate that I have to ask that. I take no pleasure in this. I don't want to ask this, but it is something I must ask. The cops have shown a blatant disregard for basic human life and decency, and bystanders are frequently affected in their numerous offenses across the country. The article adds that President Garamella said, we intend these steps to be a reminder to all residents that the threat of the virus remains very real. College life this fall must be very different than it is in normal times. Yes, it must be. But this does not appear to be your intent based on the evidence. President Garamella, with all due respect, I must question your objectivity. This entire operation has shown that your administration considers the threat of the virus to be minimal. The measures described further in the article are ineffectual at best and reckless endangerment bordering on manslaughter at worst. UVM now has 6 infected people already as of the writing of this video. According to the same article, Mayor Weinberger called for stricter penalties for students who missed the regular COVID-19 tests planned at UVM. The school now says that students who missed these 3 tests will be suspended. He then says, the plan for reopening really hinges on the regular tests happening, and that, of course, is premised on students actually taking the tests. We appreciate this clarification and commitment by UVM that there will be consequences for students who miss multiple tests. Now that sounds right. It says all the right things. And the article then explains, the school plans to test every student once a week through a partnership with the Broad Institute, a nonprofit affiliated with Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that says it will have results back within about 24 hours. The 3-test suspension is now ineffectual. It takes a week for the symptoms of the virus to appear. If someone misses 3 tests, they could not only be infected but spread to dozens of people who would already be showing symptoms. And it will also take about 24 hours to get some of these results, and 24-hour turnarounds is incredible. You cannot get that reliably. But so not only do you have students very likely missing their tests, they are also going to not even be able to get them back in a reasonable amount of time before they start exposing others to the virus.